All right, 6 o'clock Eastern, you're in the CNN Newsroom. I'm Poppy Harlow in New York with you this Sunday evening, and we begin with this shocking story. The FBI has made a startling admission. It is about crime scene evidence and how some of it was used to send people to prison and to death row for more than 20 years. In a report published this weekend in the Washington Post, the Justice Department admits that almost every FBI hair expert that took the stand in a courtroom over a long period of time maybe gave the wrong information, flawed forensic testimony that helped prosecutors. And some of those trials ended with the death penalty. Take a look at this. This is a quote from the Washington Post. It reads, FBI experts systematically testified to the near certainty of matches of crime scene hairs to defendants, backing their claims by citing incomplete or misleading statistics drawn from their casework. In reality, there is no accepted research on how often hair from different people may appear the same. Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI special agent, joins me. Also with me in Los Angeles, criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool and Tom Fuentes, former FBI assistant director. This is an absolutely stunning report, guys, when you pour through it and when you look at the numbers. Tom, let me just get your reaction. You know the laboratories that do this research well. Does this surprise you that they were banking on hair fiber evidence that it seems like a large part of the time wasn't exactly a perfect match?
No, Poppy, it does surprise me, but you know what happened is that this was determined that examinations from 1999 and before 1999, where hair examiners testified, they testified through microscopic analysis that matches were more certain, when they made these matches. Starting in 2000, they had mitochondrial DNA to do the examination to supplement microscopic, so they no longer had to rely on it. So this was a problem from 1999 and earlier. And shortly after it was discovered, the FBI teamed up with the Innocence Project to correct this, to notify every prosecutor in every case that this had come up, that some cases that were reported as matches were exaggerated, basically. It was determined that no examiner deliberately gave false testimony or deliberately lied in their examination. That's what was believed at that time, until later mitochondrial DNA analysis showed that the microscopic analysis was insufficient and in some case in error. So they've been correcting this problem for a long time. The story recently coming out is basically an update report from the Innocence Project on where they stand on the efforts to clean up this whole situation.
Jonathan, you were with the FBI. I mean, you know, this happened before your time, but looking at this, what is your take on the current guidelines? What are the current guidelines? How have things changed so that this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think whatever the current guidelines are, they're fixing to change most likely. And it's interesting that you asked that question, because that's the one thing I honed in on in this report, is that there was no written standards. And as Mr. Fuentes can tell you, that to me is puzzling, that there were no written standards exactly on how that, you should be responding to this. I mean, that is really the thing that sets the Bureau apart from everything else, is that we like to standardize things. And that is amazing that that was not the case.
Brian, you've said that most people don't realize that most scientific testing or forensics is subject to human bias. You're right, we don't. We think of DNA evidence, we think of a lot of this evidence as absolute and full proof. When you look at some of these individuals who are now being notified that their cases may be reassessed, what do you think this is going to lead to? Overturning some of these convictions? Do you think that they're all going to get another fair shot?
Well, Poppy, this is a colossal disaster. And this is not a pothole in a street. This is a sinkhole. This is a systemic failure. You just can't come and put some gravel and cover this up. This is a real problem, because you have other issues such as preservation of evidence. Think about that. What if somebody was convicted 20, 30 years ago, and now they want to try to get out, and maybe the hair fiber's gone, maybe it's been compromised? And I think another issue you've got to look at too here, Poppy, is this failure of the FBI to have the hair fiber specialist testify based on accurate science was confined really to one hair fiber unit. And 26 out of those 28 hair analysts were at one of these units. That leads to another issue that I think needs to be looked at here. Was there some kind of marching order going on here to have these hair fiber specialists testify to favor the prosecution? Because remember, none of this evidence that they testified to favored a defendant.
Right.
It never exculpated a defendant. So I think there's something hidden here that needs to be looked at.
Let me ask Tom that. I mean, Tom Fuentes, as a former FBI assistant director, did you witness ever collusion between, the department and prosecutors?
I never did, but I was not, in the laboratory and, seeing that. But in this situation, when they're examining, when they receive hairs, two samples to compare and say whether it's from the same person, what was happening is that they were identifying matches that it may have come from two different people. Now, hairs can eliminate, so not every case was the person identified as a match. In some of the cases, they were immediately said it was not a match. But in cases where they did say it was a match, it may not still have always been true. It may have looked very close under a microscope, but later the DNA analysis proved that it was not really a true match.
Jonathan, how encouraged are you that the FBI, so let me just read you the statement,
Sure.
part of what we got from the FBI. It's a long statement. I'm going to read you two important parts. They said, the department and the FBI are committed to ensuring that the affected defendants are notified of past errors and that justice is done in every instance. They went on to say the department and FBI have devoted considerable resources to this effort and will continue to do so until all of these cases are addressed. To you, Jonathan Gilliam, do you believe that we are going to see ultimately justice done here?
I think so. Despite what a lot of people may think, the Bureau is really out to affirm your constitutional rights, and we're there to protect and to serve, just like law enforcement on the street. And I think this is a good example, an incredible way that the director came out and made this admission. It shows that they're pushing forward to make the right changes. But this is why it's important to have a well-rounded case. You cannot just rely on one piece of evidence, and nothing beats good old-fashioned groundwork when it comes to an investigation.
That's true. Brian Claypool, final thought to you, sir.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I don't think just fixing and finding justice for people that have been wrong is the solution here. You have to look back and figure out how 20 years of using the wrong methodology happened, and how is it that these analysts went up and didn't tell the truth.
But that's not what I said.
You have to do two things here. You have to investigate how we went wrong for 20 years, not just seek justice for the people that were wrong. And I think we're on the right page, though, Poppy, as far as Patrick Leahy, one of the U.S. senators, does have legislation pending, and Obama supports it, to set up a forensic unit in the U.S. Department of Justice to create standards for forensic testing. Because right now, we don't have reliable standards.
Jonathan, is that a good idea?
I think that's part of the thing, but I think the Bureau has to come up with the right standards, and the Bureau is doing what they need to do in order to come up with those things. And I think that you can't just say that the Bureau has a bad reputation, because we do not. The Bureau has a great reputation, and they're going to go forward and they're going to fix this. But, science is like this, and also when you teach people to go in and how to present themselves in court, if you don't set the standards out beforehand, then these things can happen. I think that's the greatest thing that can be done here, is the Bureau goes out and fixes these standards.
Jonathan Gilliam, Tom Fuentes, Brian Claypool. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now we're